We are going to be talking about another one of Carroll's Distillery's rums from their range. They've got about four or five of them. I've got four. This one is called the Sanderling, and it's a step up from the white, but slightly different. It's been aged for 14 months in ex bourbon barrels, 200-liter barrels, and it's been issued at 40%. Even though it went into the barrel at 44% and very lightly filtered. As you can see, it's kind of like very, very pale yellow. Um, Again, there isn't very much on the fermentation or the production notes that I can tell you, but Matthew Carroll is known for playing around with his esters and so on, and something about the profile of this thing suggests that he did here too. Just a couple of other things I wanted to point out here. This thing is called the Sanderling. This is how I bought it, but on the website they now call it the Sandpiper. It's exactly the same thing. The artwork is done by an artist called David Shire on commission, which I think is really pretty. As I've said before, I do like originality and very nice something that goes beyond the peg legs and the parrots and the yo-hos and the pirates and all that bullshit that far too many people use to put their rums through the door. You know, Captain Morgan is my favorite bête noire for that particular stupidity. But anyway, be that as it may. Let's not get there. This is a rum that now, because it's aged for more than 1 year, can be called a rum, which was a problem that we had with the unaged white that we just looked at a day or two before. Over and beyond that, aside from the aging, aside from my knowledge of what Mr. Carroll does with his production process, and he plays around with his ferments and his esters and what have you, we can go straight into it because we don't need to go any further. All right. You know, this actually reminds me just a little bit of the Japanese Tida unaged white that I looked at not too long ago. It's got some of that same sour vegetables, kimchi, potato vibe that it had. And this is not a disqualifier by any means. At 40%, this thing isn't going to do anything really bad to you. It actually smells quite nice. There is a fair amount of baking spices here, which I also like. You get a sense of croissants and pastries and cinnamon dusted donuts, and you just kind of feeling there's a Tim Hortons right next door to it, selling their stuff. There's some nice fruit to it as well. Apples, pears, apricots, that kind of thing. There's a little bit of pineapple. Again, you're getting some spearmint and so on, but the spices are a little bit more forward here, possibly because even with 14 months of aging, you are actually getting something. Yeah, that's definitely there, and I particularly like that it's got a bit of salt and bitter chocolate in it. That's a nice little note there that elevates this just a bit. That's not bad. It's a very, very easy sipping rum. Again, Matthew makes it perfectly clear that this is not a sipping rum. It's really meant to be mixed. But the truth is, at 40%, it's gentle enough for you to be able to get it and taste it exactly as it is. I particularly like the fact that the sweetness comes a little bit forward now. Some of the baking spices are still there. You're still getting some both salt and sweet, as if you're in a pastry shop somewhere. There's no off notes here that I can point to that says, oh, well, this just isn't good enough or something like that. No. It all really works quite well together. There's a little bit of citrus, a little bit of Fanta 7-Up. It goes down really, really quite nicely. You could mix it, and of course you can, and many people will. It's cheap enough for that. Should it be, or can it be had neat? I guess it could be. The problem is the 40% kind of inhibits you from taking it as a neat sip because the tastes aren't powerful enough to make a statement completely for themselves. It's nice when you've had the practice, but when you try it for the first time, it may not be quite that good. Yeah, I'd mix it. It's good enough for what it is. It's definitely something you can have on a nice, long, sunny day on a beach somewhere, which is what I'm sure it's meant for. It's a lovely little piece of work. It's 40% strength is both a hindrance and a help. It helps people who are getting into rum, especially cheap Canadian rums, which this to some extent is, but you'd be surprised at its overall quality. But at the same time, the tastes aren't strong enough to kind of like jump out at you and say, oh my God, this is a drink that you can have completely by itself without anything else. On the other hand, you can actually put it into a mix, but the flavors, again, are too dialed down here for anything to really pop in a daiquiri or a mojito or any of these other drinks. Take your pick. Again, I'm not a mixologist, right? Other people will do that for me. But overall, I would, oddly enough, score this the same as the white. And the same as the high ester because it excels at different parts of the same thing. And the little bit of aging helps where the little bit of strength detracts. You see, so you kind of like give with one hand and take away with the other. I'm sorry, I can't do any better than that. It's going to be about 83, 84 points when I get around to writing the review, which will accompany this video when I finally get around to posting it. I think Matthew's done something really quite interesting here. He's granted his product isn't well known yet, and I granted that their distribution probably remains primarily local. I seriously doubt, although I haven't checked yet, whether you're going to get this in volume in Ontario, for example, or even in BC. But you can order it directly from the distillery, and I would strongly recommend that if this has piqued your interest, that you give it a shot and support local business. Why not? It's not a bad rum by any means, and 84 Punch shows that I think so too. If any of you have tried it, I'd really like to know more about your experiences with it. Some people will like it, some people will not. It's not a Caribbean rum, that much is clear. It lacks some of their ferocity, if you will. I'd really like to see Matthew dial this up to about 48, 50% and see what happens with it. But, he may watch this video, he may not. But whatever the case is, thanks, man, for producing something really quite interesting. I enjoyed this one thoroughly. So that's it for today. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.